We're going to talk through some of these varieties and do a little taste test.
Taste test tomatoes.
Truckloads of tomatoes in the street, everyone throwing them at each other. It's absolute chaos.
No groin tomatoes.
I don't think there's any specifically relating to the body.
I've forgotten the exciting facts about it.
Good. Hello, I'm Martha Swales, also known as Marf's Kitchen Garden.
And I'm Jamie Walton, also known as Nettles and Petals online.
And welcome to Homegrown with Martha and Jamie, our very own podcast.
Welcome, and we're excited to be back again.
We're both passionate gardeners, but with very different backgrounds. I got into gardening as a hobby. I'm a little haphazard, very enthusiastic, and make the most of my little London back garden.
And I'm a professional horticulturalist and have been for many years, growing food, flowers and microbes on the North Yorkshire coast.
On Homegrown, we celebrate the very best of growing your own, from a pot of parsley on your windowsill to a full-sized allotment.
And we'll prove that you don't need a lot of space to grow a meaningful amount of food or to support local biodiversity.
So, whether you're a curious beginner or a seasoned grower, join us each week as we explore everything about growing, cooking and living a little bit greener.
Welcome to Homegrown. So our second podcast, like exciting.
I know. Well, hopefully people have stuck around. Maybe some new people here as well, in which case go back and listen to episode 1. It's also fantastic.
Also fantastic. We haven't even done this one yet.
I'm very confident.
We need to...
I'm sorry, with tomatoes looking this good in front of us, I reckon we're in for a good episode.
Tomatoes is going to be a good one.
Which actually, if you want to watch this on YouTube, you can, as well as listening. But otherwise, we will describe how beautiful
each
the tomatoes
tomato
are.
in detail.
In a lot of detail.
Yeah. There is a nice bowl of tomatoes from our gardens.
Yes.
Some of our favourites.
So you brought tomatoes on the train from Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm. In a little Tupperware thing.
And I bought tomatoes on the tube across London.
Mine were on the tube for a time as well.
Wow, those tomatoes, all the tomatoes have been on the tube.
They have. They look
and they
like
say there's no air miles with homegrown. No, what is that? Train miles? Tube miles?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not. You wouldn't really want to go in the air on a tube, would you?
Terrifying. So this week we're talking all about tomatoes, and that is going to be a bit of a theme for our podcast, where we're going to discuss in detail every now and then a whole episode on a particular thing. Why do you think we started with tomatoes?
Well, I mean, they're ripe at the minute.
That is true.
And they're also quite an exciting crop, I suppose. I think most gardeners grow tomatoes, probably start with tomatoes as one of the main things that they grow.
I think it's a gateway.
Yeah.
I think it's a gateway veg. I think that, like,
Gateway
the
veg.
first year I ever grew stuff, I definitely grew tomatoes.
Me too.
Not very well.
Me too. One of the first things I grew.
Yeah, I put far too many in one grow bag, 6 in one grow bag, and then they all got like blight and mildew and
not much airflow.
No, I still try to grow lots of things in small spaces. So the tomatoes I've brought in are from 2 different places, because I grow primarily in small spaces and urban spaces, as you know. So I've got my little London back garden, 5 by 8 metres. I've got quite a lot of raised container planters, hanging baskets. Yeah. I've got some beds in the ground as well, but some of these are from containers, and then some of the larger ones, I've got a little patch in a community garden. So it's not like a full-size allotment or anything. It's more like sort of 8 metres by a metre and a half.
Some grown beds.
Yeah, some beds.
And these are outside as well.
They're outside. And the biggest tomatoes are actually from there.
And they're grown outside.
Yeah,
nice.
I was kind of amazed because, I mean, I've grown nearly all of my tomatoes outside because I've only ever had a greenhouse for like 1 year. And to be honest, the tomatoes in my greenhouse have not done as well as the ones outdoors, because I try and put too much in my greenhouse.
It has been a particularly hot year.
Yeah.
So if you've been able to water them, which is my issue, then you're going to get reasonable tomatoes outside.
Yes. So this is probably like my whole harvest today. I've been up and got everything that was ripe. But for you, I'm guessing this is just a tiny fraction, a taster of how many tomatoes you're currently like drowning under in your huge community garden.
Well, 60 foot the polytunnel is, and it's predominantly tomatoes. So there's, like most years, I'll grow kind of 20 to 30 different varieties, I think, just for fun, really. I mean, when I was growing in commercial kitchen gardens, they'd always want me to grow just 2 or 3 different varieties, so they could have like one for breakfasts, one for this, like money makers.
Money maker.
So boring.
Wow.
I mean, they're all right, but they're just kind of that medium-sized red tomato. They'd want those for their breakfasts, and then they'd want maybe like 2 cherry tomatoes for like a salad or something like that. So it was quite boring.
Yeah, because like I feel like money maker is like the most close a homegrown tomato looks like a supermarket tomato. Yeah. It is literally just like a medium-sized round tomato.
Round tomato.
But now you can grow whatever you like, right?
Yeah, so the community garden, all the donate. I mean, it's nice because when we're donating them, there's varieties that the people who are getting the donations probably haven't ever tried, which is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, if you go down Borough Market, that would spout 100 quid's worth of tomatoes in that bowl.
Yeah. So I grow up maybe 20, 30 different types. Some staples, and I've brought a few of my staples, and then some that are kind of just random, just to see what happens.
Yes. Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about tomatoes is the huge variety. And I actually can't think of quite as varied. I don't know if there's anything else in terms of like homegrown vegetables. Obviously things like chilies are quite varied, but I do think tomatoes, like even just in this bowl, right, we've got tiny little currant tomatoes right up to this huge like beefsteak tomato, different colours, different shapes. Do you think there's anything else like that in the growing world?
I don't think so. Not vegetable wise.
No.
I think it's the most kind of widely grown crop, definitely in the UK, I'd say. And there's so many varieties. I know, have you heard of Tomato Revolution?
Oh, they just sell tomato seeds, right? They're a seed company.
Yeah, and he breeds them and gets them from here, there and everywhere, and he always sends me a nice kind of selection of them, and they're great. So little red packets with... So a couple of these are from him.
Nice.
One of them I hadn't grown until this year, so we'll go into those in a bit. But yeah, he's got a really nice selection, but must have 50 different varieties on the website.
I mean, I'd be interested to know how many there are. I mean, every year there's new ones, right? So people are always breeding them. It must be like a lot of genetic variability in the kind of gene pool. But of course, the difficult thing with picking tomatoes, I always find, is like I always like to have my staples that I return to. And then, like, it's like, what do you judge it by? Because some things can be really prolific and they don't taste very good. And then some things taste really good, but they're hard to grow. So I think, like, the holy grail of a tomato is something that's, like, easy to grow and taste nice.
What's your top tomato? I'm
going to give such a boring answer. And, like, the problem with it is that... No, actually, there's one in there that I probably like better. The one that I would always recommend for beginners, which I feel a bit bad about because it's a hybrid, and there's various reasons why that's not so...
I know which one you're going to say.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. So Sun Gold is a yellow cherry tomato, orange cherry tomato that is so widely sold, and whenever I plant seeds, it always comes up way more easily than the rest. Yeah. It's pretty hard to kill. It always produces. So do I think it's the most exciting? No. Are there things around like whether I disagree with hybrids being the best? I imagine you don't grow any hybrids, do you?
Not really.
No.
This year, because of the community garden, a few volunteers have brought some in, and one of them is Sun Gold.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So just for people that don't know, so basically you have 2 different kinds of seeds. You have open pollinated seeds, which maybe have been like, they're like heritage varieties. You can save the seed, you can like keep them yourself. And then there's like seed companies producing hybrid varieties, which they kind of, I guess it's almost like they control the intellectual property of. So you can't really keep them. The seeds from those tomatoes won't produce the same tomatoes. So you're buying them every year. They're expensive. But they would argue that hybridization produces something that's either more resistant or more prolific.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of trade-off. And like, I'm kind of judging myself for saying Sun Gold, but you know, I grow it every year. It splits really easily though, so it's no good if you actually want to like... I mean, all of the ones in the bowl are probably split.
Yeah, that is an issue with them.
But it's just a good starter tomato. And but yeah, there's some other ones in there that I really like. I love, and I've managed to grow these outdoors pretty well for the last few years, like a really meaty tomato. So the kind of things that I've just been on holiday to Provence. Nice. And we had tomato salad every day. And in the supermarket, they had the names of the different tomatoes. Yeah. And then you pick. And so actually 2 of the ones in there are like the ones I was eating on holiday, which is Marmande and I can never say it, Cordy Burr, or like Oxheart tomato. And particularly the Oxheart one, you cut it open, hardly any seeds, really silky flesh, like just on holiday every day, big tomato salad, red onion, and then like a dressing with just like neutral oil, vinegar, lemon juice, mustard, a little bit of garlic, and then just cover it in salt, stick it in the middle of the table.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you can only do that with ones you grow yourself or if you go abroad.
It's true.
To
They just have that sunshine.
Yeah, that we just
And
don't have.
we just don't. But, you know, I still think, I mean, I do think that when you grow them yourself in the UK, it is tricky. The skins are usually a bit thicker. Tomatoes might be a bit waterier. But I'm sorry, it's still like a total highlight of the harvest year, isn't it?
It is. And I've mentioned it before, like, I prefer to grow them than I do eat them.
No way, Jamie. Another vegetable, well, a fruit, I suppose, that you don't like.
A fruitable. I like them, but I'm not, like, I just like growing them more than I like eating them.
Obviously, I'm a self-professed geek. And, like, what I love about growing your own is it kind of expands into lots of different areas. There's kind of interesting history, science. I mean, that's what I kind of love about it. I think so much of, I would say, what it means to be human can be seen in a garden. Like the way there's history, there's evolution, there's culture, there's so many things going on. And I think plants tell a great amount of those stories, and they kind of carry the stories with them in their genes, as it were. So this week, I'm going to tell you about the history of the tomato.
Nice.
I'm going to go all Dan Snow on you here, right? Maybe not quite that much, but I am going to give you not full snow, bit snow. I was going to say sleet.
Bit of sleet.
Sleet, if you like. So tomatoes, part of the Solanum family, or nightshades, which includes, and what I love about plants is what they're related to, because that's kind of like you start to see how they exist on the kind of tree of life. So within the Solanum family, you have got things like potatoes, aubergines, chilies, tomatoes, even tobacco. So it's a really big family of plants, and they probably originally are native to the northwest corner of South America, so modern day like Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. And I've got some tiny little tomatoes here, which I suppose are the most like what the first tomatoes would have been like, except they might have even been yellow and disgusting. So there are a few instances of a suggestion that maybe the Incas occasionally ate wild tomatoes, but they were not nice. And there's this idea that maybe they were pre-domesticated in that region and then moved up to Mesoamerica, which is modern day Mexico. And it was actually the Aztecs in like the 14th to 16th century that domesticated the tomato into something that is vaguely familiar to us today. And I think it was pretty popular with the Aztecs because they already had the tomatillo, which is part of the same family. So for you guys at home, tomatillos, actually much more popular still in America now to make salsas and things. They come in the husks, and there's like tomatillos that you use to make salsa and are more savoury, and then there's also like the physalis. I never know if I say that right. Physalis?
Yeah, I think so.
Cape gooseberry, which is the little orange fruit in the husk. So supposedly in this period of history, there was lots of different tomatillos, and then tomatoes kind of were grown alongside that. The Spanish arrive in Mexico and colonize, and then set up a trade route between Mexico and Seville, actually. So our word for tomato comes from the Aztec for tomato, and the Spanish took on a very similar sounding word, which was tomat. And then it went through loads of different names when it was in Europe, and it's kind of interesting that it's gone back to tomato because it had completely different names, which is why the Italians have pomodoro, because for a while it was known as love apples. So it's interesting that it's gone back to that kind of original word. In the same way, I think that avocados, have you ever heard that about avocados being?
Being what?
Aztec word for testicles?
I haven't.
Oh,
there we go.
That's my years of working in telly. It's like, what facts have you got about avocados? Oh, well, let me get this one out. Testicle fruit.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
We're now in like the 16th, 17th century. Tomatoes arrive in Spain, and they're generally treated as like an ornamental because obviously related to nightshade.
Yeah, which you wouldn't go near.
And so like people were pretty suspicious of them. Italians though were a bit keener on breeding them, and that's not to say they weren't also eaten in Spain, but it took quite a while for people to start wanting to eat them. They kind of didn't trust them. They went from green to like mushy quite quickly. They were like wet, and there was this idea around like fruits and vegetables actually being like something you're quite suspicious of, because obviously like at the time eating raw vegetables was probably much more likely to make you sick from like dirty water and stuff like that. So but the Italians bred them into tomatoes we're much more familiar with today, again because they probably weren't that tasty when they first arrived in Europe. But it was the Brits that particularly hated tomatoes. And there's so many funny descriptions around the sort of 17th, 18th century of people being really kind of like disgusted. They weren't just like, we don't like tomatoes. They were like, these are like devil's fruit, basically. They hated them. And at some point there was a botanist who misnamed them part of the mandrake family, which was associated with witchcraft. So they were seen as like bad stuff, witch's fruit. Yeah. And the thing that's interesting from a growing point of view is that it probably wasn't taken on by the Brits with much gusto because we couldn't really grow them. There was a period of time, 14th to 19th century, mini ice age. So I always think, like, when you hear about sort of Victorian tales and before that, like about the Thames freezing and it being really cold, it was colder. There was like a mini ice age that didn't end. And so it would have been much harder to grow tomatoes then than it is now. So we couldn't grow them, so we sort of hated them, thought they were rubbish. Then you get to Regency period. Jane Austen is writing to her sister Cassandra saying how much she loves tomatoes and eats them every day. So there's this quite, it's adopted quite rapidly and kind of spreads throughout Britain. They love them in America, and then it gets into like preserving and pizzas and everything. So it kind of, they held off for a long time, and then suddenly everyone jumped on board, including Jane Austen herself. So that's kind of brought us to now, I guess. But the thing I wanted to say about these little tomatoes that I've got here is they're actually like a different, supposedly much nearer to the wild fruit. Yeah. And actually in a separate sort of branch to all other tomatoes, and they grow in quite a different way. They just sprawl around like on the floor like a vine almost. And those have actually been pretty hard to kill. I've been growing those in a small dry container, and they still are going for it. So,
and by the way, if you're just listening to this, they're very tiny little tomatoes.
They're very tiny.
Very tiny little tomatoes. They're kind of akin to like wild strawberries over your kind of domesticated strawberries.
Exactly.
That kind of size difference.
So there in the bowl is like a whole load of human history going all the way back to probably the foothills of the Andes. And, lots of different influences and breeding and disgust and witchcraft and scandal.
A long history.
So that's my not so potted history of the tomato for you this week.
That's exciting.
So obviously we've got a big bowl of tomatoes in front of us.
We have.
But of course, the tomato starts way earlier in the year. So I guess if you're listening to this at another time of year, it might be useful to give a few top tips for growing tomatoes.
Definitely. Well, it starts usually for me in March. So early March, I'll sow my seeds. When do you sow yours?
Yeah, I'm March as well. I'm interested to know because I have to do them inside my house. Like, where do you, if you're growing on a bigger scale?
I usually sow them on a propagator in the polytunnel.
Right, fine. So you've got electricity in there and you can keep it nice and warm.
Although I didn't have this year in the community garden because there's no mains water or electricity. Oh. So I grew them at home.
How many?
A lot. I got some kind of racking and got some grow lights, and they didn't start off as well though as they usually would in a polytunnel. I suppose it's just the light difference. I bet that's true. Like I always have to start mine indoors, and it is actually kind of the most difficult time of the year trying to juggle like growing them, and even under the lights they always sort of hit a point where they're not really. And I have in the past, I mean, they sort of say they're a tender plant, you shouldn't put them out until after the frost and that, but when I've had even a mini greenhouse, I take them quite small and it's not coming up to be really freezing, and I've kicked them out, put them in pots in March or April, and they go on to grow much happier than the ones that I keep in longer, and then they get more root bound and they get less light. I'm kind of, I know tomatoes are tender, but I think on the scale they're one of the less tender tenders. Does that make sense? And you can plant them out a little bit earlier and then just cover them on a particularly frosty night or something like that. And people will sow them earlier than that in February. I know a lot of people who sow theirs in February. But then if you sow them in March, they'll catch up. I find they just catch up. So I just wait until kind of mid-March, really. I think 13th is the date I usually sow mine on. Yeah.
Gosh,
calendar?
I don't even. I mean,
You just
I
sow them
couldn't.
at some-
Whenever
at a certain
I'm
point
like,
when you
oh
get chance.
gosh, and then I probably just like keep sowing them over a period of about a month.
Yeah.
And I think obviously if you're growing them undercover, you can start them earlier. Whereas if you're doing, I grow pretty much all my tomatoes outside, and so I think you go through to like April.
Yeah, if you're growing them outside, I'd probably sow them in April.
Yeah, because what you don't want, which anyone who's tried to grow any amount of tomatoes ever will find, that you suddenly end up with a house full of tomato plants and you don't know where to put them, and you're lining them up on the windowsill, and it's like it's too cold to put them out.
It's
and
all
it's
well
just
and good
like,
when you've got one tray with like 40 in little seedlings, but then when that tray you need to pot them all up, then you've got 40 plants in 9 centimetre pots,
and then
to find a
nightmare.
spot for. Yeah.
I've done them before where I've started them in 1 centimetre soil, like cubes.
Soil blocks.
Yeah, and they're like tiny. So like, as you say, I could fit like almost 100 in a thing. And then next minute I'm like drowning in tomatoes. And then, you know, I'd say every year I probably sow so many more tomatoes than I ever have room for. And then I'm like giving them away, or if you die, do you know what I mean? And you feel bad. But not something to start outdoors. I think that's a real basic idea, is that like there are seeds that regardless you still want to start indoors. They need a bit of warmth, right? So tomatoes wouldn't be something you just sow in the garden and wait for them to come up. In the UK, other places may be different, but they need a bit of warmth, don't they? Like 18 degrees average to pop up. And the thing about temperature is the warmer it is, the faster germination is as well.
Sometimes they pop up in the polytunnel.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, if they're in a reasonable spot, I'll just leave them to grow. And they often do much better.
Yeah, I've had ones pop up, although I just let them sprawl everywhere, and then like they would just
and then they kind of take over the whole space.
Yeah, and then I had to
I mean, if you're listening to this in like a warmer climate than the UK, then perennial.
Yes. Well, lots of, and aubergines, chilies, like within that family that I talked about. It's actually interesting, I mean, how many plants we grow as annuals because of the British climate, really, not because that's actually what they are.
Well, with chilies, I'll keep a proportion of them and try and overwinter them. Often, out of 10, maybe 2 or 3 actually survive, but then if they do survive, they're much more vigorous the year after.
Interesting. Yeah, I've had like physalis or Cape gooseberry that I've even left in a pot in the garden. It's come back 3 years in a row.
That's pretty cool.
So that's mild London winters though. But my takeaway is I've grown tomatoes on allotments in gardens all over the place in London. And I don't want people to feel like tomatoes are something you can only do if you've got a greenhouse, because obviously if you're somewhere really cold, but you might be listening to this from all parts of the world.
Hopefully.
And all parts of the UK. And so it's definitely well worth trying. And I would say start with a cherry tomato if you're going outdoors, because that is smaller, quicker to ripen. But I'm amazed. These big beefsteak tomatoes, I've got a few different ones here, have grown on my plot that's only new this year. It's not really been very well cultivated. It's been dry. It's been windy. And the plants are laden. The one in my greenhouse is just all leaf. It's had too much of a soft time in there, so it's growing into this giant, like, triffid green thing. Hardly any fruit on it.
Nothing's ripening.
Yeah, and these things are like tiny little plants that look really miserable. I didn't stake them. They fell over. I haven't pruned them. They're covered in tomatoes, though. I mean, they're huge.
Nice.
So I've got a question for you. So you're sort of more of the commercial grower. You've got a big polytunnel. I'm going to make a guess that you mostly grow like vining big tomato plants.
Indeterminate.
Yeah,
varieties.
indeterminate.
Yeah.
So this is actually one of those bits of jargon that for about 10 years I just didn't even know what it meant. But determinate, indeterminate. Tell it, because I think it actually is. It's sometimes helpful, it's sometimes not. But it gets confused with things like cordon which are all slightly. Cordon is a pruning method, but So indeterminate for us.
Indeterminate don't have essentially a determined size, so they will just continue to vine. And if left kind of, say you lived in a warm enough climate where they could just continue to grow, they would just vine off here, there and everywhere. So you would generally kind of grow those upwards, either a stake or some kind of trellising. And then determinate, they have a determined size that they will reach, generally more like kind of bush varieties and things such as that.
And also the smaller like hanging basket varieties.
Yeah.
Pros and cons. I would say most tasty tomatoes are indeterminate.
Yeah.
And they ripen over a much longer period. So like sun gold, sometimes those they just keep growing. Yeah, top tomato, sad. No, but so if you've got an indeterminate, can reach 12 foot. You can keep trailing it around your greenhouse, or
and
you run
can
out
kind
of
lower
pole.
them as well. Once they've grown up, you can kind of prune away the lower leaves as they grow and the trusses, and then you can kind of like lower them down. So if you plan that at the beginning of the year to have space at the end of your polytunnel or something, you can then lower them and allow them to continue to grow. So they would grow in kind of like an
L shape. So
an
you
L
bring the
shape.
stem down, like the bare bit of stem, and then you have the bit with the tomatoes growing up. And
you might have kind of like a couple of foot of stem just above the soil surface, more or less, and then it'd go up again. So you can grow them a bit longer.
So in your kind of setup, indeterminate makes sense because you're harvesting over a long period. You've got plenty of space.
And I'm growing in a polytunnel, so I use twine essentially.
Easy to support them. I'm dealing a completely different. There's like the community plot. I can grow some indeterminate up canes, but in my garden, lots of hanging baskets, lots of containers, and the useful thing about hanging basket and container tomatoes, often called like trailing or dwarf tomatoes, is don't need any pruning, stay pretty small. Like the pruning around tomatoes can be a bit confusing. Like you just bung them in and they just, classic one
They'll
is
just
like,
do the thing.
Tom Thumb, hundreds and thousands.
I grow a nice one called house tomato.
I've done that this year.
Kind of is what it says on the tin as well. It's just
I grew it on my windowsill.
that's what they're for. Yeah. So they'll grow the best on a windowsill in the house.
But that one really amazed me. The plants were so strong, and then they were like, they were ripe by like June.
Really, yeah. No, they're great. And you can grow those all year round.
Yeah.
Just on your windowsill.
Yeah, I think because I've got a little grow light in my living room, I might have. There's some under there now. I might do some December tomatoes.
If they're on a windowsill, the light's not as good throughout winter, but you still can get away with it. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I think tomatoes are so adaptable, good for all different kinds of spaces. And
then pruning. So you don't necessarily have to prune, but it does help, particularly if you're growing a lot of tomatoes.
For your setup, you want to keep it under control, because tomatoes can just get completely...
Good. I mean, I did a trial last year or the year before. I left a section at the end of the polytunnel and just left them to grow, and it just turned into a huge bush of tomatoes. Well, not many tomatoes, tomato leaves, I should say. Not many ripe tomatoes by the end of the season. They got issues as well with kind of fungal diseases because of poor ventilation, things such as that. Yeah. So
I also think it's interesting. Like I've been growing like maybe 2 or 3 stems, so I do it as like I let 2 or 3 grow.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, as well, and you can trellis each one.
Yeah.
I often do that with aubergines.
I think it shows how adaptable they are, and like definitely when I started growing tomatoes, I just bunged them in, and there was just like sort of tiny tomato. You get more, they're smaller, and then obviously you're more likely to get like disease and stuff. But I just sort of chucked them in. Still to this day, like bush tomatoes, I find I'm like, sometimes I don't think it's very clear on the packet sometimes because there's like semi-determinate and all of this. But like basically, I prune them all the same, stick them in.
Yeah.
And
then with your prunings, you can duplicate the plant essentially. So prune your side shoots, pop them in some water, and then they'll root, and you can plant them out. I never do it, but in theory you could grow 1 tomato plant or buy 1 tomato plant, just snip off all the side shoots, and you've got 10, 20
well
plants.
I have done it, Jamie. Can you guess what tomato I've done it with?
Sun gold.
Yeah, I suppose the advantage of it is that if you started your tomatoes really early and then you propagate a side shoot, tomatoes can continue to ripen into October. I picked them off my allotment in October, like nice little trusses, and the later ones have kind of got a bit more vigor because they're not so knackered from the season. I think that is like sometimes it is worth doing a second sowing of cucumbers, courgettes, even tomatoes.
I do with cucumbers. I don't usually with tomatoes, but I do with cucumbers and courgettes because they're a bit more short-lived, I suppose, rather than tomatoes.
But it definitely gave the tomato, because you're just using the side shoots, so it's like a little bit second generation, but you don't have to wait as long for it to germinate from seed. So that's hopefully in a roundabout way, because we're always very to the point on this podcast. Covered the basics. They are a tender. You need to start them indoors. You should harden them off, and you can have a go at growing them outside. Find the right tomato for the space. Small ones for hanging baskets, indeterminate for up canes or in your polytunnel or greenhouse. And prune them or don't, up to you. Okay, so we're going to talk through some of these varieties and do a little taste test.
Taste test tomatoes.
So what have you brought to show and tell today, Jamie?
I brought a few of my favourites. So, we were talking about Italy earlier. in Martha's history corner. This one is one of my favourites. This is Costaluto Fiorentino. But it's a small one. It's not as exciting as the larger ones look. But it's for anybody who's just listening to this, it's a ribbed beefsteak variety. So I think they're pretty because of that.
It's literally, last time I went to Italy, the tomatoes that you see everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few as well. It's a Costaluto Fiorentino. There's a Costaluto something else. There's a few.
A big tomato breeder, obviously.
Yeah. So it's one of my favourites. It tastes great for canning, great for sauces, and just looks impressive.
We cut it open.
Straight down the middle.
There we go. Cross section. Okay, so inside, what we got? Lovely. Oh, smell that. I mean, you know what a tomato smells like, but
I do, but
that just hits you, doesn't it?
And it does. And it's when they're a bit larger, the cross section is a little bit more exciting, but it's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. Not too much seed. There's like probably 3 little pockets in here. Should we cut a bit off?
Yeah, I mean, you give it a go because
You've tried it.
I've tried it. I don't need to try your sun gold either because I've tried those before.
Nice texture. Quite high acidity, aren't they? They've got like, because I don't like a tomato that's just too sweet, because the beauty of a tomato is, of course, the balance of sweet and acid. So yes, that's a very nice tomato.
So that's Costaluto. Then one that I really like because it's very blight resistant.
Okay.
So if you do suffer with blight in your garden, this might be one for you. It's sky commish.
Never heard of it.
I've forgotten the exciting facts about it.
Good.
Other than it's blight resistant.
Okay.
And for those of you who are just listening, it's a nice orange tomato, beefsteak tomato. I just like the colour. And if you cut it open, it looks really nice inside. These ones I slice and I'll put just on like some sourdough.
Yeah.
Rub a little bit of garlic on. Slice these, put the slices on top.
So it's very round, very tomato.
Very
it's like quintessential tomato, except for the colour, which is kind of a bit orange. And I'm just cutting it open here. Reveal. Are you ready? Very nice.
It's a little bit over that one.
I'm going to try a bit of this. What did you call this again?
Sky commish.
Sky commish.
And then
okay.
I'll run through the next two quickly, and then you can talk about yours.
Right.
But that one's overripe, really, but it's still quite nice.
Nice.
Then probably my favourite cherry is chocolate cherry. They do get a little bit squidgy, but chocolate cherry is kind of like a brownie coloured, as you'd imagine, with the name chocolate cherry.
Yeah, it's kind of like a deep reddy brown, but with more of a kind of like greeny brown shoulder. I grow this one actually. I haven't got any this year, but it's a nice little cherry tomato, and inside lovely colour as well, because you've got the kind of gradient of green through to red. I'm just going to eat them all. Oh, lovely. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. And then this one is a new one this year called...
Sorry, let me just finish chewing.
It's Split.
Wait. I just don't want to have everyone having to listen to me chew over there. And that is a black tomato, round black tomato.
So it's round.
A little bit red underneath.
Goes a bit red underneath once it's fully ripe. It's Split, but it's called Black Beauty. So I've never actually tried.
You can have a bit.
This will be the first. Usually with the black tomato varieties, they're not as tasty as the others I found. Like I've grown Brad's Atomic Grape.
Oh yeah.
Because it's multicolored and it's cool, but it's not that tasty. I haven't found.
Do you like a little slice? Your first taste of what is it? Black Beauty. This
Black Beauty.
Red in the middle, little like green seed kind of segments, and then like the dark chocolatey black outside.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, flavour wise, texture wise. Texture wise, I think that's a winner. It might be because the other ones are slightly overripe, but it's really silky. It's like the kind of tomato you have when you're on holiday somewhere nice and hot. I like that a lot.
So that's mine. They're the favourites.
Okay, well look, I'll pass you the plate and the knife.
Not much room
with loads. Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is remember what these are. No, I do actually know some of them. Some of them I don't know. I just picked them because they were ripe. So this is, rather than a hand-picked selection of my 4 favourites out of 20, this is just everything that was growing today. So I'm going to start with this one, which has got a split in it, and it's really small, and it shouldn't be this small, but what happened was I mixed up my labels. There weren't any labels. I wrote it down. They all got mixed up. And I'd planted like a mini hanging basket tomato in the same seed tray as this, which is meant to be like a big sort of beefsteak tomato. And I thought I'd got them the wrong way around. Anyway, this got planted in a hanging basket, and it's like a big tomato. So this is about a quarter of the size it would normally be. But you'll notice, so for those of you just listening, it's a different shape to the others. It's kind of heart-shaped, right?
More or less, yeah.
Sometimes they look a bit more heart-shaped than this. So this is a variety that I can never say, and whenever I try and write the name of it on like a story, I get like 10 messages with every spelling version that I try that it's wrong, because it kind of derives from Italian and French. There's just slightly different names for it, but it's like basically ox heart. So it's like cordibeux. Like embarrassing, sorry, if anyone could write in and give a good, maybe a voice note would be helpful. Essentially it's an ox heart tomato, and
I grow one called purple heartthrob that's like a similar shape to that.
God, well that sounds like the next step up. I better give that a go. But yeah, the reason I love this tomato, and you'll see when you cut it open, is that it's got virtually no like seed. It's very much like a solid fleshy tomato. When I was on holiday in Provence recently, I was eating that every day. Stick the nut. Yeah, that's it.
It's a stabber rather than a slice of this knife, isn't it?
So, describe it for us, Jamie.
It looks like a tomato inside, really.
But don't you think there's like so much flesh in there?
Yeah, no, there is, compared to like the seed cavities are really small. And I noticed it has a little bit of blossom end drop at the bottom.
Yeah, well, that'll be in that.
Just a little bit.
It normally doesn't get that, but it's
because of the hanging basket.
The dried out hanging basket I had to take off the wall because I needed to do something, and left lying on the gravel bit in the middle of my garden.
Usually just a bit of inconsistent watering that can cause that. But obviously in a hanging basket, that's the harder to water consistently.
It was definitely inconsistently watered, and I went on holiday. So I think that's... Do you want to try a bit?
Okay.
Go on, give me a slice. I've had it before, but I never say no to I've only got about 3 this big this year because of the hanging basket incident, so I better enjoy it whilst I can, you know. Okay, lovely. Look at that. It's probably overripe.
Give it a go then.
I personally think flavour-wise,
it's good.
No, I like it. Lots of olive oil and a bit of salt would go a long way. Okay. This one here. Marmande.
I've grown it a few times. Good.
Classic. It's just blown me away this year how easily it's grown. As I say, this is what would you say, like 8 centimeters across. Big beefsteak tomato.
Ribs not as deep as the Costalutos, but ribbed as well.
Yeah, ribbed at the top. It's a very pretty tomato. It's kind of flat, but I having neglected. Oh, here, why don't you can do
kind of running out of space here, aren't we?
I know, we're getting a bit overwhelmed with all our tomatoes, but it's
slicing down the.
So all grown outside and just been laden with fruit. I mean, I picked about 8 of those this morning off 2 plants.
It's pretty good going.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look at that. It's quite handsome, isn't it?
It is.
Oh, look. Maybe a bit dry.
No, but I'd say that's the most impressive slice of the day.
Yes. You wait until you see this one.
And it's actually got some kind of like some spaces in the seed cavities.
That's what I was wondering, if it's been like, maybe it's the watering.
Maybe. I grew a variety last year called... It had a name.
They often do.
I forget. But it essentially, it looks more like a pepper. And it has...
Oh, like really hollow inside.
Yeah, and it's really hollow inside. I can't remember. If you know that variety, just send us an email.
Please help us. Well, give us a slice of that then. Do you know, this would be good in a... do you know, one of my favourite... videos I've seen recently is just someone going, first tomato sandwich of the season, and it's just like a video of a guy cutting a slice of tomato and putting it in between some bread, and I reckon this would be good. I think the flesh is going to be a bit dry.
Yeah, I've had Marmande. They're nice. Bit dry, good.
It's a little mushy, which I think is a problem that happens with outdoor tomatoes. Okay, I'm finishing up on this, which is called currant tomato. Maybe it's like currant sweet pea. it's very cute, right?
It is very cute.
It's a tiny, I've cut a whole truss off and the whole truss fits easily, kind of pretty much in my hand. And they're tiny little tomatoes.
Like a tiny marble.
Yeah.
I can't even, very small.
But I actually have also in the past grown a hanging basket tomato called Hundreds and Thousands, and it looks like this, and they cascade out the basket. This one is a little bit more unruly because it is, I think actually, on a different branch of tomatoes to pretty much all other tomatoes. It's much more like a wild tomato.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to someone about this recently and they were saying it's not very nice, but I actually think it is quite nice, and I just pop out. I never put them in anything really. I just pop out and just eat them in the garden. So
give it a go. Nice. Quite firm as well.
Quite firm. Skin's a little bit thick, but it's very tomatoey.
Yeah, it is.
And I actually think that is cherry tomatoes for me, and this is obviously even smaller than cherry tomato. I think just have a bit more concentrated flavour than the big tomatoes. They've got like kind of slightly different colour and use or something, but you get so much kind of like tomatoey, sweet acidity from like smaller tomatoes, and big ones can be a little bit more watery, especially if you've grown them in the UK.
On the subject of growing, let's talk about companions.
Now, this is, again, over to you, because I feel like it's not something that I have done loads of. And so, I mean, like, there's maybe the companion planting, the basic one that would come to mind would be like tomatoes, marigolds and basil.
Mm-hmm.
But I am very keen to know,
a good combination.
Yeah, some more.
I think most would grow those as companions, right?
Yeah. So what is the concept of companion planting for people that have like never come across it before?
Well, plants like friends, so they need some companions.
Don't we all?
So essentially, they support one another in a certain way, shape, or form. So that might be through pest protection. They might draw in predatory insects that feed on pests that like a particular plant. They may improve the flavour, such as basil with tomatoes, supposedly. I don't know the science behind it. I don't know the science behind it, but supposedly that does. And I mean, they're a great culinary pairing anyway, right?
Yeah.
So grow basil and marigolds. Marigolds, the roots supposedly help detract or deter non-beneficial nematodes.
Oh, little worms for anyone who's wondering what they are.
And they also draw in predatory insects as well. They just look
to eat other bugs.
Yeah, they look quite nice, don't they, as well?
Oh yeah, I've got some.
I don't think they smell very nice.
No,
but they look quite nice. So yeah, they're classic. They're classic too, aren't they? And I think when I first started growing plants in general, I'd focus on each plant in isolation. Do you know how I could best grow a tomato plant or carrots or whatever it may be. But in nature, nothing grows in isolation, does it?
No, and there's obviously so much interesting science about the kind of like underground trading between roots and fungi and soil. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think wasn't it Charles Dowding, the great Charles Dowding? Charles Dowding is an iconic grower. Like the father of No Dig has this beautiful vegetable garden that like just always looks perfect.
Homemakers.
But talks about the idea that when he first started, I think, when he put plants together, they grew better. Like rather than having them all spaced out, and you interplant other things between each other and create something that mimics nature more, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what we kind of have to look back to move forward, in the sense that was the way in which plants were grown. And then we moved into kind of industrialized agriculture and monocultures, huge fields of the same crop, and then you have some pest issues and everything else that comes along with it. Yeah. Then you spray them and et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of looking back to move forward. Indigenous practices. Three Sisters is one of the big ones. Three companions, corn, squash and beans, and they all help one another in a certain way. And tomatoes, going back to tomatoes, basil and marigolds, I still plant those with my tomatoes, but I'll also plant sweet alyssum.
Oh, yeah.
As a kind of ground cover.
Nice.
And it's pretty, low growing, smells like
honey.
Yeah. Draws in predatory insects, lace wings, things such as that, hoverflies. So that's a nice ground cover, because ideally you don't want bare soil, do you? ideally. So if you can kind of, and often you'll see kind of in a pot or in a growing bed, you'll maybe grow tomatoes, then you'll have a little marigold underneath it, and then it's just bare soil really. So alyssum is a nice kind of ground cover that you can add to.
Do you grow that from seed, or like how do you?
You can buy them as well as plug plants. Another one is chives. I'll plant chives down the back for your spider mites. They're
That's what I need.
Yeah, so they
get those chives in the greenhouse. Yeah,
spider mites. But I predominantly plant those because of the cucumbers and things. I plant those around I also plant them around my tomatoes.
Oh, I'm going to be doing that next year.
Yes, you can do that.
So last bit of tomato trivia for the day. I know you can't wait. The biggest food fight in the world is in Spain, and it's called La Tomatina. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, well, Google it. There's loads of pictures. Right. And basically truckloads of tomatoes in the street, everyone throwing them at each other. It's absolute chaos. So can you guess a couple of the rules of La Tomatina Festival?
Guess some of the rules?
Yeah. So it's just, I think they're all just like throwing tomatoes at each other, basically. Everyone's literally covered head to toe in tomato. It seems a bit wasteful, actually.
It does seem a bit wasteful. Do they kind of like sweep them up and put them in one of your puddings?
I don't know. We need to find out what happens. If you know, let us know.
If you know, let us know. Yeah. Rules. How many rules are there?
It's 4 rules.
No face tomatoes. Like as in pelting them in faces.
I think that should be one, but it's not.
It's not one?
No. But actually, I think you're on the right track. Safety.
No groin tomatoes.
I don't think there's any specifically relating to the body.
Right, okay. But it's safety related.
How could you make a tomato less aggressive?
No stem.
I actually don't know if you would guess this.
No.
So basically, I'm going to let you out of your misery on this one. You have to squash the tomatoes before you throw them at anyone.
Oh, that's boring, isn't it?
Well, it's more messy.
I suppose.
But you want to inflict maximum damage. I can tell. Well, look in your eye. You're like, I'm only turning up if I can throw some whole tomatoes.
I mean, that one
that would
do
knock
some
you
damage,
out.
Right? Yeah.
I wonder if there's any sort of rules around the size of the tomatoes.
I don't know. You tell me.
Well,
you know the rules.
Well, you can tell I know this inside out. So I've really brushed up on this.
So one rule is they have to be squashed first.
Have to be squashed, yeah.
And there's 3 more.
Just etiquette, basically.
I really don't know.
I think it's quite tough. Okay, so number 2 is no ripping clothing.
No ripping clothing.
Yeah, so think like football.
So this isn't really like, this is kind of just like...
This is a
safety thing. Just don't rip people's clothing, which is kind of like...
I think a sensible rule.
A sensible rule just in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then basically, I think it all gets quite out of hand, but when they say you stop, you've really got to stop.
If you kind of like, what if you're like in trouble?
What do you mean in trouble?
Is there a signal...
Oh, that you can do.
That you can do.
Like tapping out, like or like
safe
word or something.
Yeah.
That there should be. Because you could literally just be disappearing under all those squashed tomatoes. No, exactly. Everyone squashed them. There's tomatoes running down the street.
That's another thing.
I think a real slip hazard.
Yeah, slip hazard.
Imagine trying to do that in London. There'd be uproar.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, I know you wanted to like sling a whole tomato unsquashed at someone's head, but you can't throw anything else apart from tomatoes.
Right.
Well, I'm sure you're sad about, but no. I can't imagine you're rushing over there to join in.
Probably not. No.
I still just want to know what happens to all the tomatoes.
Well, they'll just be like swept up, I imagine, won't they?
Well, you're not
sad.
Yeah. Do you reckon they like feed them?
I wonder how many tomatoes are thrown at one of these.
That would be a good. That would probably been a good fact to find out.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I've actually come with very little information about the event, but I'm throwing it open to our lovely listeners to send us some more info.
If you've ever been.
Oh, yeah. If you've ever been to La Tomatina Festival, can you please give us the lowdown? We want to know, like, how many tomatoes, how long it goes on for, what they do with the tomatoes. Is it scary? This sort of thing. Okay, well, that's it. We have made it to the end of our second episode. I'm not sure how many of our listeners have made it to the end, but if you're still here, thank you very much.
But if you have, I'd love to see some of your favourite tomato varieties.
Yes, as well as telling us about the Tomatina Festival.
Yeah, tell us about the festival.
That's obviously a bit niche. Favourite tomatoes. And as we said, looking for highly productive and delicious. If you can hit both of those
Yeah.
and give us a list to try next year, that would be fantastic.
And don't forget to like, follow, subscribe or review, or tell a friend to watch it too.
If you've got any questions you'd like to ask us or anything else you want to tell us about gardening or growing, then you can send us an email. Details are in the podcast description.
Homegrown@joypeddlers.com.
We're doing a weekly episode, so there'll be plenty of stuff coming up, and we can't wait to have you join us next time.
Maybe even some guests.
So thanks for listening.
Or watching.
See you next time.